Hello there. Welcome in Thursday edition of the show. It's here. It's finally here. NFL season kicking off tonight. Our coverage of Cowboys and Eagles begins at 5 right here on Extra Sports 1300. Appreciate you tuning in. Lot of NFL talk today. Love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. And of course, we start with the Denver Broncos as they completed the trifecta this offseason. And they have first, they got Cortland Sutton done. Then they get Zach Allen. And now the one that Sean Payton said was always going to take the most time, Nick Bonitto, has gotten done. He is going to get $120 million with incentives. That's important. It's going to be a 4-year contract. He's going to play out this year, and then it's going to be the next 4 years after this. $70 million guaranteed, and he will get $26.5 million per year on average. I've thrown out the question in recent days whether you would take Micah Parsons or Nick Bonitto. And I think the answer to that question is fairly obvious. Because if you said that Nick Bonitto has the chance to be Micah Parsons, then why wouldn't you just take Micah Parsons? So player for player, to me, it's not really an argument. You take Micah Parsons over Nick Bonitto. You eliminate your downside because Nick Bonitto, let's be real here, one elite double-digit sack season. Right? Just getting off of his rookie deal. He's a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of his production. You would eliminate the downside or the risk of signing up somebody who becomes a one-hit wonder. And you get somebody in Micah Parsons who for years has proven, and I think most people would acknowledge that Micah Parsons is a better player right now than Nick Bonitto. So to me, that's an easy conversation to have. However, if you can pay Nick Bonitto $26.5 million for the next 4 years instead of $46.5 million per year, that has to factor into the equation. If Nick Bonitto gets Micah Parsons money, then that's a bad move for the Denver Broncos. Because you don't know that Nick Bonitto, he's not as good as Micah Parsons, and you don't know for a fact that he will ever be as good as Micah Parsons. But if you can sign him up for the next 4 years at $20 million a year less than Micah Parsons, to me, that's a fair deal. And you don't have to give up extra draft capital to get Micah Parsons. So now that we have these numbers in the mix, and we didn't know what they would be. All right, was he going to get even close to TJ Watt money? Was he going to get close to the deal that Micah Parsons signed with the Green Bay Packers? We didn't know. That's what made it such a difficult contract extension to figure out. And the way that Sean Payton put it was that Nick Bonitto, something to the extent of he was, reaching another level or another phase or something like that. He was going from a rookie deal, a second round pick rookie deal, to being paid a significant amount of money for his first veteran, if you want to label it that way, contract. But now that the money is in, don't get me wrong, Micah Parsons, better player. And if you wanted to be 100% sure that you would have an elite pass rusher for the next 4 years, Micah Parsons would be the way to go. But you're signing Nick Bonitto for $20 million a year less. That seems fair to me. And also, it fits the Broncos timeline, I think, a little bit better, because the other thing I throw in with Micah Parsons, the Green Bay Packers are a team that truly, I believe, is ready to win a Super Bowl now. And by adding Micah Parsons, it just further fortifies that and truly makes the Green Bay Packers one of the handful of teams that you could envision winning a Super Bowl this year. I do not believe that the Denver Broncos are ready to do that, as much as some people in the national media will push this agenda. I am not subscribing to it. I don't think that the Broncos are a Super Bowl contender right now, this year. We'll get into whether they'll make the playoffs or win, all that kind of stuff. They're not a Super Bowl team, not in my opinion. So why this Nick Bonitto thing makes even more sense is that you're signing up a pass rusher for what he may become. Similar to what you did with Pat Surtain, and I mean what you may become as a team, as much as I mean the player. They knew what they had in Pat Surtain. They had enough of a body of work to say, yeah, he's that dude. And maybe you would argue that the Broncos already have that with Nick Bonitto. I think Nick Bonitto is really good, and I think what last year was the beginning of what Nick Bonitto is going to be. But I had more confidence in who Pat Surtain was when they locked him up to an extension than Nick Bonitto. But now you're getting Nick Bonitto, who's still young, who can grow a little bit, perhaps, as a player, that as the Broncos grow. If the Broncos are going to be a Super Bowl contender, it's not this year. It's 2026, 2027. You know, it was year 4 when Sean Payton was in New Orleans that they won a Super Bowl. He's in year 3 in Denver. But now you get a player that fits your timeline maybe a little bit better than a Micah Parsons does. Because your window, if you're the Denver Broncos, you're hoping is just now opening up. Whereas with Micah Parsons, the best place for him to land is a place that's ready to win right this second. Go for a Super Bowl this year and maybe doesn't have a lot of time on the back end. And the Packers are an interesting case in that because they paid Jordan Love, but he's still a young quarterback. A lot of their receivers are young. So the Packers are kind of a in between, right? The all in, we got to go. Like if Micah Parsons ends up in Baltimore or Buffalo is what I'm talking about. Like they're ready to go. All their guys are maxed out. They're as good as they're going to be right now. And it's time to go. The Broncos, and yes, I'm talking about Bo Nix first and foremost, is not as good as he's going to be right now. How much further he has to go, we've debated and will continue to debate. But this is a team that's still growing, that's still improving. They're not ready to win a Super Bowl this year, in my opinion. But that's why keeping your draft capital, just in case you need reinforcements, and paying a guy that you feel very good about that maybe quite hasn't hit his peak yet. You pay him to this and you save a bunch of money. This is a good bit of business, no matter what you think of the Denver Broncos Super Bowl chances this year. This is good. He's going for $20 million less a year than Micah Parsons. That to me seems like a fair deal. So we'll get more into what this means for the Broncos, and we can have the discussion of are they ready, because we're sitting here on the first day of the NFL season, so we have these kind of conversations today. But the Broncos got this deal done at an amount that seems reasonable when you compare it. Micah Parsons just got paid. And you do the thing that you set out to do if you're Sean Payton, going back to the culture aspect of this. The Denver Broncos, for a long time, were not perceived as a team that would take care of their guys. They, for a long time, were perceived as not a draft and develop team. And I think that second one is certainly fair, right? And you can understand it, right? You land Peyton Manning, all right, now it's time to get free agents. We don't have time to draft and develop. We got to go now. This Broncos team is different. So now they're taking the tact of we do take care of our guys, and our guys are the guys we draft and develop. Cortland Sutton's one of those guys. Nick Bonitto's one of those guys. They didn't draft Zach Allen, but he's one of their guys too. And the Broncos had three players that we all looked at and said, are the Broncos going to be able to get all three of these deals done? And to a certain extent, they needed to get all three of these done, because absent the Micah Parsons deal, like, the Broncos had to pay Nick Bonitto. Micah Parsons, trading for him with what developed in Dallas, that was the out. That was to say, all right, now we don't have to pay Nick Bonitto. We could just pay Micah Parsons. But absent that, you have to pay Nick Bonitto. This team has many pass rushers, but he's the best. You have to have him. So there were some questions along the way of whether the Denver Broncos would be able to get all three done. And they did. And the impact that it makes in the locker room, that once again, other Broncos players can look and say, you know what? When it comes time for me to get paid, this is an organization that is going to take care of me. And it will have an impact on the next draft class and the one after that, and so forth. So this is all good. And getting it done, I'm not surprised they got it done when they did. I said I would be very surprised if Nick Bonitto ran out of the tunnel against Tennessee without a new contract. And with the NFL season here, deadlines make deals, and here's one. Broncos got it done with Nick Bonitto. Once again, 4-year deal, $120 million if he achieves all that he can achieve. And he's going to make $20 million less a year than Micah Parsons. This is, once again, a good bit of business that George Payton was able to get done, and he deserves credit for it. Now, with all these contracts taken care of, we can move on with the business of the season, which is, where are the Broncos going this year? I welcome your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. How about the more immediate question, where are they going Sunday? How might that game play out? Well, they play the Tennessee Titans, so let's get some insight from Nashville on Sunday's game. That is next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports here on Extra Sports 1300. We'll continue the Nick Bonitto discussion as we move along the program, but the important thing for Broncos fans, he is locked up for the next 4 years at, to me, as pass rushers go, kind of a bargain bin price, if we're being honest about it, which is a good thing. And now he will be on the field with the peace of mind knowing he is a Bronco for the foreseeable future, and he and the Broncos will host the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. And joining me now to discuss Sunday's game from the Titan perspective is the executive producer of Titans Radio. He's been on the show before, and I didn't scare him off. He has joined me once again. He is Rhett Bryan. Rhett, pleasure to have you back on. How are things? Can you hear me okay, Rhett? It seems like Rhett's not hearing me. Let's see. We'll work on getting Rhett on here. I don't think that he's able to hear me. We're trying this newfangled thing called video that has some apparent bugs in it, but hopefully we can get Rhett going here. I can't. You got me now, Rhett?
I got you now.
All right.
I had you hooked through my Apple CarPlay, and it probably wasn't talking to each other correctly. Here I am, and I apologize.
Oh, no. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your insight. So how ready is Cam for Sunday?
I'm going to answer it by saying this. We're going to find out. I mean, think about this. He's never done it at this level. He was an electric player at the University of Miami last year. And his road to this has been well documented in a documentary series that's going to drop pretty soon called Zero Star. But as well as I do, you can't manufacture experience. And so all the joint practices, all the preseason games in the world's not going to prepare you for what he's going to see on Sunday against, a Denver Broncos defense that is probably top 5, maybe higher. So we're going to find out.
How has it gone? Because everything you say is 100% true. And I went through this last year, obviously, with Bo Nix. But has he hit the little milestones along the way that makes you feel like he's as ready for this as maybe he's ever going to be?
Well, I'll give you a couple of things. And Bo Nix, what do you have, 63 starts in college or something like that? Set the record?
More than anybody in the history of college football, yes.
Because he's about to be 26 years old, right? So,
right.
And Cam, I forget how many starts he had, but it's on up there. And yes, I would answer that with yes, just because if you look at his statistics in the preseason, he didn't play all of the preseason games. He didn't play, all 4 quarters or whatever. And it was very pedestrian-like, but yet there was no picks thrown. And in the last preseason game against the Minnesota Vikings, I mean, he led them on a 75-yard scoring play. It was a field goal, but still. Mm-hmm. The thing about him, it doesn't seem like the moment is too big. Now, he's going to find that out for sure at Empower Field at Mile High at 2:05 Mountain Time on Sunday. But he just doesn't seem rattled. He's very grounded. He's very mature for a guy that just turned 23. Very wise beyond his years. I was doing a lot of stupid stuff when I was 23 years old. And he doesn't appear to be at all.
What is the message from Brian Callahan to Cam Ward in terms of what he's asking him to do first and foremost Sunday and here early on in his rookie year?
So the message, and it's really kind of what they've been preparing for this whole time, it's just operate within the offense. And I guarantee you what they've got for him is it's not just base stuff because he's smart enough to see things, but we're not at this place where they're going to be layering calls try to make things happen. They're going to do things that is within his talent range and acumen and skill set to the best ability to help him succeed, to set him up for success. Because that's the thing that Brian Callahan's been very vocal about. He's not like the old school coaches where, well, you run my system or no, it's my way or the highway. He has conformed. He's like, listen, I want what you ran at Miami. Let's talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, what we're trying to implement here. And certainly they've installed the offense at this point. But I think it's going to be a lot of things to help him be comfortable and to operate within the offense so that he can have success. And honestly, I think that starts with Tony Pollard. He may be the best 2 or 3 players that the Titans have outside of Jeffrey Simmons or somebody of that ilk. And Tony Pollard has had a fantastic offseason and training camp and all of these things. He looks like he's ready to just plug in and play and run out of the tunnel and make things happen. It's going to be interesting to see what his carry load is like beyond 20, 25 carries if they get to that, because Tajay Spears has been placed on IR. He had a high ankle sprain in the first preseason game, and he'll be out for a while. So Julius Chestnut, who's been around for a couple seasons, and then Khalil Mullings, the 6th-round rookie from Michigan, the converted linebacker, are the other guys in that room. But I think it's going to start with that. And, if I'm Vance Joseph, playing devil's advocate here, I am going to take Patrick Surtain, probably the best cover corner in the league, and I'm going to match Calvin Ridley, his main security blanket, and see if these other guys can beat us. And I think that's what we'll see a lot of. Now, whether he'll run with him and match, but I mean, here's the thing. The Broncos defense has so many talented people at all 3 levels. That's been the message from Nick Holtz, the offensive coordinator, is the other guys have to step up. 5th-round pick Elikiah Manor from Stanford has been named on the first unofficial depth chart. He's a starter when they show him in 3 wides. It's him and Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley. But you've got Gunnar Helm, you've got Chiga Okonkwo, who's in a contract year at tight end. So other guys are going to have to step up, because Calvin, I think, is going to get his, but it ain't going to be easy. We know what Patrick Surtain can do.
Yeah, Rhett Bryan, executive producer of Titans Radio, my guest. There were times last year, because everything you're saying about Vance Joseph, I agree with you, but there were a couple of games, one especially against the Cleveland Browns, where it seemed like the Broncos were somewhat reticent to send Pat Surtain with somebody, and that ultimately cost them in that game, but that's neither here nor there. Gunnar Helm, how does he look? I thought he was an intriguing prospect, and obviously his combine and stuff, there was some information that came out that certainly explained why maybe he failed to impress at the combine. How is he looking?
He looks great. He is a very mature young man himself, and at 6'5", 240 and change, huge wingspan at I think 81 inches, huge catch radius. He would be somebody that the Broncos defense would need to pay attention to when he's involved, and especially in the red zone. I think they have a plan for him there, and that big of a catch radius and target area. That certainly is something that could be a thing. Now, again, they still have Chiga Okonkwo. They have, other options in this thing.
Sure.
But he and Elikiah Manor have a chance to cement themselves in this offense pretty early, just because this team, Ryan, is so young.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, in fact, I was explaining to some hosts on our flagship station yesterday, I feel like the Titans are a couple of years behind where the Broncos are right now. And I feel like Mike Borgonzi, as the general manager, has somewhat followed the same path of success that George Payton has in his 5th year. He's the GM. Mm-hmm. They built it from the inside out, which is exactly what you should do. And that's why, the Broncos are one team out of 32 that return every starter from the offensive and defensive line. The Titans would kill to have something like that stat wise. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He had swings and misses with some things between Randy Gregory and Nathaniel Hackett and trading for Russell Wilson, but he kept working and building.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exactly what the Titans are trying to do, building this thing out from the inside out. They're going to need some more acquisition periods in free agency and the draft to acquire what they, because the thing that is going to tell on the Titans at some point, and it might Sunday, is lack of depth in a lot of position groups.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line they've invested heavily in. I'm anxious to see what the injury report looks like today. I was not at practice, but left tackle Dan Moore was out yesterday with an ankle situation, and I'm anxious to see if he practiced today. But they've invested a lot in and Lloyd Cushenberry appears to be a full go, ready to go and line up at center where at the place where he cut his teeth.
Yeah, and we've been talking about DJ Jones versus Lloyd Cushenberry. We love those kind of storylines, and we'll see that hopefully on Sunday. So given what you're saying as far as the timeline for this Titans team, how would you define a successful season in Tennessee?
Ryan, I'm glad you asked me that, because I hope that Amy Adams Strunk and the family have some level of patience, knowing how far this thing has dipped down and trying to get back up. And so if I'm her, and I'm not obviously, but if I'm ownership, I'm looking at really 3 different things, maybe 4. One, Cam Ward. Is Cam Ward upright and healthy? Because the offensive line, the second thing, has done its job and protected him. And is Cam Ward's trajectory going the correct way? And then the other part of it is straight up what it always is, wins and losses. If you could double your win total, 6 wins, and you got all those other things checked, I think you say, Brian Callahan, keep working, Mike Borgonzi, keep building, and let's move forward to 2026 when this thing is all said and done. Now, can they get to a place in the season where maybe they reel off a win or two they weren't expected to do because maybe Cam Ward is doing some things? We watched Bo Nix closely from Nashville, just knowing that, okay, we're probably going to have a quarterback as the number 1 overall pick. So let's pay attention to what this guy's doing. Heck of a lot of experience in college, but he was brought along. And then, man, for about week 10 on, he and that offense were clicking pretty good. And our color analyst, Coach Mac, Dave McGinnis, we were talking on his show the other night. That Week 18 game against the Chiefs, yeah, they'd rested everybody for the most part because they had a seed in the playoffs, and so it was a blowout win for the Broncos. But what got our attention, no, it's not a preseason deal, and it's not necessarily a regular season starters loaded up lineup. But he completed 18 completions to get that thing started for a record. It's like, okay, doing something right now. That also speaks to Sean Payton's offense and getting the quarterback the rhythm and the reps that he likes. The other part of this for Titans defense, I mean, T'Vondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, Draymond Jones, all these guys that they got to be able to stop J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey when they're inserted in this, because we know what that run game could do. And that's going to be an interesting part of this, because most of that room has churned and those parts are elsewhere, like Javonte Williams in Dallas now. There's so many storylines to this from both sides. There always is in week 1, but it's enhanced and multiplied and magnified because you have the number 1 overall pick. He's coming out to make his first career start against a defense that led the league in sacks, second in pressures, with just rushing 4, which is the magic formula for what you guys need to do in that division to beat Patrick Mahomes, to beat the Lamar Jacksons, is their cage rush with 4 and have the rest take care of the rest. I'd be honest. I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm somewhat envious of the roster that has been built in Denver, but I also know doing it right, and Mike Borgonzi, by all examples so far, it appears to be doing that. I know that this is a window opening up of some special things for Denver, and that's just the thing that you can't control those things. But I hope that Cam is dialed in, because Mile High, I mean, people talk about Seattle. That's a tough place to play when you're not wearing the orange and blue. There's so much, in this thing. I don't envy his position.
Mhm.
And I think Titans fans have kind of gotten down on me locally. It's like, man, you seem like you're kind of Debbie Downer. It's like, no, I'm really being realistic because hope springs eternal right now. Everybody's 0-0 and undefeated and all those good things. Man, that Broncos team, there's something to be contended with. They are. I think the interesting thing is I kind of watched them in the preseason, knowing obviously they're coming up in week one, and how the first team offense with Bo Nix had issues scoring drive wise. And again, that's not predictive to what happens in the season. But I do know it took 6 drives and 39 plays for them to finally get a score, while the 2s and the 3s, the Sam Ellingers of the world and the Jared Stidhams, they're scoring like crazy. Now, again, I know that's against 2s and 3s, but I thought it was interesting and then I've heard Sean Payton say, well, we didn't really show anything. I think there's some people that are scratching their heads a little bit going, no, wait a minute. That may be true, but how come everything is, it's like
Right.
1 and 1 are making 3. Now,
Yeah.
sure as I say that, Bo Nix will run for 75 yards and 2 scores and then add another whatever through the air. That's the other thing, man. They have got to bottle him up because people don't think of him this way, but he's a dual threat. He really is.
Yeah, well, a little bit later on in the show, I'll be getting to what Jeffrey Simmons said. As you might imagine, his comments have made its way to Denver, and I will say I don't think that he is being unfair in his scouting report of Bo Nix, but certainly it shows that the Titans are weary of Bo Nix's ability to run with the football, and we'll see how much he is allowed to do that, both because of the Titans and also because of Sean Payton, because I don't know how much he loves him running the football. But the important thing is football is back. We got this nice appetizer, but the main course coming up Sunday afternoon. Rep Brian, really appreciate your time and your insight and enjoy the season. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Ryan, I'd be glad to join you again. And I'm very excited for listen, anybody isn't excited about National Football League? Well, football period. It's high school Friday nights, college Saturday, and then Sunday is the bookend with our professional teams. And I'm sure it's that way where you are. But I'm super excited. I love that college football started last week, and so now we get the full gamut. And Thursday night football tonight. So here we go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. Rhett, really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
All right, Ryan. Take care of yourself. Glad to join you.
Yeah, my pleasure. That is Rhett Bryan. He is the executive producer of the Titans Radio Network. Phenomenal insight into the Tennessee Titans and what they're looking at going into this Broncos game. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we move through. Again, Jeffrey Simmons with some comments. If you have not heard those, I don't understand why people are taking offense to it, because I think that Jeffrey Simmons is not lying when he talks about the scouting report on Bo Nix. Maybe that's what I'll get to coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. Make sure you get your vote in for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza. The voting ends tonight, and the most deserving prep athlete in Southern Colorado will be joining me on the show tomorrow. So if you're a TCA fan, a Harrison fan, a Discovery Canyon fan, or a Coronado fan, or even if you're just a fan of high school sports, go and vote extrasports1300.com. And while you're there, fill out the nomination form, and maybe your nominee will be up for vote next week. It's the Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza. Phenomenal insight from Rhett Bryan from the Titans Radio Network. Really appreciate that. And it's a perfect segue as he is talking about how the Titans feel about Bo Nix. This is something that we're going to see this year. The idea that defenses now, it's not an idea. The idea is that Bo Nix, that they have caught up to Bo Nix. That's the idea. The reality is all of these teams preparing for Bo Nix have a full season. Even the tape of Bo Nix the first 4 weeks of the year looked very different, to Rhett's point earlier about what Bo Nix was the back part of the season as opposed to what he was early. Now they get the whole thing, right? They get game 1 through 17 plus a playoff game against the Buffalo Bills. They have all of that tape. They can kind of average it out and say, all right, here's what he was at the end of the season compared to the beginning. They have all of this tape. That's the fact. The idea is, does that mean that defenses will catch up to Bo Nix? And that they'll be able to slow down Bo Nix, stop Bo Nix, all this kind of stuff. That's going to be one of the storylines of this upcoming Broncos season. But here's the first verdict in by an opposing defensive player, an elite one at that, in Jeffrey Simmons, when he was asked about Bo Nix and how they're preparing for him. This is what he said.
Bo Nix going to, his first read out there, he's going to take off running with the football. So we got to make sure we're on the same page. We got to make sure we have a balance of rushers. Not trying to be robots out there, but at the same time, we know that if it's not there, Bo Nix is going to take off running. So it's going to be on us up front to make sure we keep him in the well and keep him in the pocket.
The audio from Teron Davenport, and ESPN NFL Nation reporter who's covering the Titans. So as you might imagine, those comments hit the ears of Broncos country quite wrong. And I get it. You're going to stick up for your quarterback. What Jeffrey Simmons is saying is 100% right based on Bo Nix in his rookie year. I know you hear that and think that's a slight. And that's your prerogative. It is the scouting report on Bo Nix. Because he did it a lot last year. And the biggest Achilles heel, here's what Jeffrey Simmons is leading to as far as the Titans game plan. What he's saying is essentially Sean Payton will design a gorgeous play for Bo Nix, right? Just a work of football art, because that's who Sean Payton is. And he will create something to where the first read is the best one. Right? And more often than not, especially late in the season, that first read worked. So what they're going to try and do first, they got to take away that first read. And that's a little bit of a question with the Tennessee Titans defense. Do they have the ability to take away Bo Nix's first read? But if they do that, then the idea will be keep him in the pocket. Because then he can't run. Then you can generate pressure. What did we see all throughout the preseason? Especially in the 49er game. You get pressure on Bo Nix and he can't escape. bad things are going to happen. Best case scenario for the Denver Broncos, he throws a pass that's a little bit off the mark, incomplete. But that's where he makes poor decisions that get intercepted. It's where he throws the ball away and takes a safety. You saw preseason. That's the blueprint for beating Bo Nix until Bo Nix throws his own counterpunch. Until Bo Nix is able to go through his progressions fast enough that he can get rid of the ball if his first read isn't there, being confident in that second read and seeing it fast enough to where he can deliver the football. This scouting report is not a wildly different scouting report than most rookie quarterbacks. Here's the other thing. If I'm a Broncos player, I'd be saying the same thing about Cam Ward based on his college film. Right? If his first read isn't there, that's when he looks for the escape. Now, I will say that Cam Ward at Miami did hang on to the ball a little bit longer trying to see, but he's going to try and escape. Right? First read's not there. He's looking to get out of the pocket. Now, Cam Ward isn't going to run like Bo Nix did last year. He's just going to be looking downfield, trying to buy time and make a play. But they're both going to try and get out of the pocket. So the Broncos should be saying the exact same thing in their meetings about Cam Ward. We can take away his first read. We have Pat Surtain. The first read will more often than not be Calvin Ridley. To Rhett's point in the last segment, and he's speaking from a Titans perspective, he would expect Vance Joseph to have Pat Surtain be on Calvin Ridley the vast majority of that football game on Sunday. Because that will most likely be Cam Ward's first read. Then you take that away with Pat Surtain, and when that happens, I'm sure the Broncos are expecting Cam Ward's going to try and get out of the pocket. He's not going to stand in there going through all of his progressions. He's a young quarterback. He's going to try and get out and use his legs. The Broncos are going to try and keep him in because they hope that it'll either lead to a sack or will lead to Cam Ward making a poor decision with the football. But this is what Bo Nix is going to need to show in year two. If we look back at the end of the season and say that Bo Nix progressed, Bo Nix got better, this is precisely the area in which we will identify because it's the most glaring thing. Sean Payton doesn't want him to run with the football. Sean Payton wants him to continue to win from the pocket. Or to win from the pocket. But we haven't seen Bo Nix be able to do that if his first read is taken away. I get why you think he's disparaging Bo Nix. He's not. It's a very real and accurate game plan or scout of Bo Nix from the year 2024. And you saw San Francisco in that first preseason game, and you also saw it the last preseason game, the defenses try and do the exact same thing. And it's why this Denver Broncos offense sputtered. Sean Payton had to leave them out on the field for longer than he intended, just so they could come away with some semblance of success. The preseason was a carryover of an extension of the 2024 season. Now we find out Sunday and beyond whether Bo Nix is truly going to take that step. And this precisely is where he could take that next step. But you see the game plan. Try and take away his first read, which with the Broncos offense, good luck figuring out what that first read is. This is where Sean Payton's nameless, faceless skill position group comes into play. He wants to be able to employ all of these guys. So the Titans, I think, are going to have a hard time figuring out, where the play is supposed to go or what Bo Nix's first read will be. But if they're able to identify it and shut down, then the goal will be to keep him in the pocket. And that also, as accurate as that is, easier said than done with Bo Nix's escapability, which you saw on full display in the third preseason game. So I have my doubts that the Titans are going to be able to execute this game plan, are going to be able to take this very accurate scouting report and parlay that into a great amount of success against Bo Nix on Sunday. But they have the right idea. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Coming up next, you will hear from the very rich, all of a sudden, Nick Bonitto. He signs the 4-year extension. What does he think about it? You'll hear from him next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports Hour 2. Our coverage of Cowboys Eagles NFL kickoff coming up at 5 from our friends at Westwood One Sports. So we don't have the normal 3 hours to chat. So if you have some thoughts on the day's topics, feel free to jump in. Super Bowl prediction, maybe. Broncos prediction. I mean, I guess, does tonight change a lot in your mind? It shouldn't, right? It really shouldn't. Tonight's game should not, unless there is an injury. Unless there is a significant injury tonight, which none of us hope that there will be, there's no reason why you should flip your Super Bowl prediction or your prediction, certainly for the Broncos. What does tonight have to do with them? But if you want to get in your prediction before the season officially kicks off, feel free. 719-247-1313. Kind of laid out mine. I have the Chiefs and the Packers in the Super Bowl. I'll get into some of the other divisional things coming up a little bit later, but today's news has kind of taken precedent, and for good reason, because the Denver Broncos, a few days away from their season opener, have now completed all of their offseason business. The last piece of the puzzle was to get Nick Bonitto signed, and they signed him to a very lucrative deal. Don't get me wrong. Nick Bonitto is a very rich man now, or will be. If he hits all his incentives, he will get $120 million over the next 4 years. He gets $70 million guaranteed, but the AAV is what I'm looking at, especially with Micah Parsons recently signing. And I'm looking at Bonitto getting 26.5. I'm looking at Micah Parsons getting 46.5. And I'm saying that is not only fair for Nick Bonitto as compared to Micah Parsons, but that's a good piece of business, beneficial for the Denver Broncos. Because they are a team, in my opinion, that is not ready like the Packers are ready to win a Super Bowl this year. And now you have Nick Bonitto at a reduced rate. You could go out, supplement, bring in another Dre Greenlaw, Tuanoa Hufanga. You keep your draft capital. Like, this is good. If you could get Micah Parsons, that's great too. And Micah Parsons is a better player than Nick Bonitto. But where the Broncos are at this stage of their arc, with how they built this thing up, I think that paying him $20 million a year less than Micah Parsons, it makes sense. If they were paying him $5 million less than Micah Parsons, then I'd be singing a different tune. But to me, this seems fair. As did the Zach Allen deal, as did the Cortland Sutton deal. So George Paton, if this is the last piece of offseason business, had himself a pretty nice offseason, all in all. But the big winner today, of course, is Nick Bonitto. He does got to play on that rookie deal for one more year, but he knows that he's got a lot of money coming his way over the next few years. And here was the Broncos pass rusher earlier with a big old smile on his face. It's Nick Bonitto, who this morning agreed. I don't know if he actually signed. Did we see that picture? But agreed to a 4-year deal, which is going to pay him $26.5 million on average a year. If he hits all of his incentives, it'll pay out $120 million over the course of 4 years. Couple of things there that I wanted to hit on. You know, we've been talking about this part of the Nick Bonitto story, and I think it is interesting, and I appreciate his candor when it comes to this. I liked the pick of Nick Bonitto coming out of Oklahoma. I thought it was a good pick by the Denver Broncos. Didn't immediately pay dividends. And we've been talking about it, right? This is a guy that just now became a double-digit sack guy. And now you have to pay him, which made this negotiation, I think, a little bit more difficult. Just didn't have the track record of some of these other pass rushers that have gotten paid this offseason. And I thought it was interesting that he talked about after that rookie year that even he kind of doubted what he was going to be in the league. And it was a meeting with Vance Joseph where he was told, like, you can be essentially what he has become. And I think that's a big part of all of this. Not only Bonitto's extension, Zach Allen's, Cortland Sutton's, the belief that this organization has in their player. You know, from the outside, I can say, like, should they believe in player X or player Y the way that they do? But you hear it constantly that George Paton in this team and Sean Payton, look, I remember referring to the first few days of Sean Payton's regime as the Red Wedding. Like, there were a lot of people that had played for the Denver Broncos. Justin Simmons immediately comes to mind, that were fan favorites, that people liked, that were good locker room guys, all this kind of stuff that Sean Payton looked at and said, this is not my guy for whatever reason, right? And then there's Russell Wilson and there's other players too along the way. In fact, a couple of them will be playing for the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. So they went through the kind of this purge of players. Some of them Broncos fans were not going to miss. Others they were. But what you got down to was a group of players that Sean Payton believed in. And if Sean Payton doesn't believe in them, I got to say, if George Payton believes in them and Sean doesn't, I know who's going to win that. George Payton believes in a lot of these guys because this is a homegrown team. This is a draft and develop team. He believes in his work. And Sean Payton came in and was able to say, yeah, not that guy, but that guy. Not that guy, but that guy. So when you hear the constant theme of the organization believing in me, I know you hear that a lot of places. But given how closely you follow the Denver Broncos and how closely I follow them, you know that when they say that, it's true. Because Sean Payton came in and cleaned house. Right? Sean Payton came in and identified very quickly who the guys were that he didn't believe in. And kept the guys who he did. And I don't think that process is completely done yet in Denver. We're just year 3. But I think most of it is done. And what you're left with is a team, and it comes through when Sean Payton makes these bold proclamations about what the Denver Broncos are going to be. It's because he believes in the group that he has. And George Payton believes in it. So when Nick Bonitto says they believed in me and it leads to a less contentious negotiation, like that's real. That's what the Denver Broncos are now. What they will be on the field, we'll continue to squabble about. But the culture is there. They have a culture in place that they have not had. And these players feel like the organization has their back. So when it comes to a negotiation like this, I would say more with Nick Bonitto than Cortland Sutton or Zach Allen. Nick Bonitto could have gone the route of Micah Parsons. He could have gone the route of Terry McLaurin. He could have done that kind of stuff, and he didn't. And I think it is a credit to the Denver Broncos the way they handle things that it never got to that point. And more than that, it's a credit to Nick Bonitto. Here's the story moving forward. I mentioned at the top, Nick Bonitto getting $20 million less a year than Micah Parsons seems fair. It also creates the ability for us to look back as we have with Pat Surtain and say, wow, what a bargain Nick Bonitto is. That possibility happens because the Denver Broncos got this deal done. Even as opposed to if they would have waited the season and then bid against other teams for Nick Bonitto's services, the price tag would have inevitably gone up. So the Broncos do have a chance to have another potentially elite player at a premium position that is a bargain compared to what other guys are being paid. But until we get to that point, the perception of Nick Bonitto is going to change. Nick Bonitto now is being paid not like Micah Parsons, so he doesn't have to be arguably the best pass rusher in all of football. But what he was last year, he's got to do it again and again and again and again. The expectations for what Nick Bonitto is, Nick Bonitto was a good pick, and then he was a disappointment in his rookie year, and then it was a guy that you thought there were some signs of improvement, and then he popped last year. Well, now that's just what he's going to be expected to be because he's being paid $120 million. Nick Bonitto has to produce now. It's not found money anymore. It's not a nice story anymore. Now Nick Bonitto is being paid like an elite pass rusher. And this season, he's going to have to go out and earn that paycheck every single time because I can give you the best example in Colorado sports, Michael Porter Jr. With Michael Porter Jr., what he was asked to do, he actually did it quite well. But he was being paid like a star. And what he was being asked to do and what he was able to do, in many people's minds, was not commensurate with the money he was being paid. And he became a popular scapegoat, punching bag, whatever you want to call it, because of the money he earns. And it happens across every league in every city in America. When you get paid, making an NFL comparison, Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy this year and beyond is going to be judged differently than he was judged up until the time that he got paid. We do this with quarterbacks all the time, and we'll do it with Nick Bonitto. He has to be a double-digit sack guy. He has to be flirting with 15 sacks, I think, at minimum. For some portion of the fan base not to turn and be like, what was last year somewhat of an aberration? Is he not really this guy? It doesn't take long for that doubt to creep in. And that's what has changed now with Nick Bonitto. Now that he's in a different tax bracket, the expectations are different. He and Pat Surtain, and really you could throw in Zach Allen into this mix given his contract, but he's a veteran player. They got to produce all the time. Nick Bonitto, you heard that question right at the beginning of that press conference there. Nick Bonitto is now the highest paid defensive player in the history of the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos have had some of two players in particular, Von Miller and Champ Bailey, who were the best at what they did. Pat Surtain now is the best at what he does. He's not getting paid like Nick Bonitto, nor should he, right? He got paid a couple of years ago. He's not a position as important as the one that Nick Bonitto plays. But when you are being put above on any list, Von Miller, Champ Bailey, Pat Surtain, you got to produce. Take your thoughts. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, I've been thinking about this because 1 year ago, nationally, if you would have said the Commanders and the Broncos are going to be playoff teams, I don't think that you would get a lot of support. I think locally, there was a more nuanced thought towards what the Denver Broncos were going to be last year, and I'll get into that. But the Commanders and the Broncos, for many reasons, were the surprises of the season last year. Who has a chance to be the 2025 version of the Broncos and the Commanders? I got one in each conference. I'll give them to you next here on Extra Sports 1300. Saturday night, Switchbacks FC continue their push for the playoffs against Monterey Bay FC, and it will be Superhero Night presented by Children's Hospital Colorado. Costume optional, but strongly encouraged. If you would like to go, I have a 4-pack of tickets for Saturday night. Kickoff is at 7, if that affects you in any way. 13th texter, Switchbacks and your name at 719-247-1313. And if you do not win or you need more than just the 4 tickets I am providing, switchbacksfc.com/tickets. I think last year, in a general sense, if it was written that the Denver Broncos and the Washington Commanders would be what they were last season, I think in general, people would think that was crazy talk. I will say that for the Broncos, and it's obvious why, no one knows this football team better than we do. I don't think it was incredibly shocking that the Denver Broncos were what they were last year. Did they exceed expectation? Absolutely. But I thought they were a team that would be in the playoff conversation, but ultimately fall short. So I did not have them as a 10-win team, certainly. And so they exceeded expectation, but it wasn't like the thought around here was that the Broncos were going to win 4 games. Now, I can't say that I was if you would even characterize that as bullish, I wouldn't, because I didn't feel like I was bullish on the Denver Broncos. I thought that they would be competent and decent in year 1 with Bo Nix. Didn't think they'd be a 10-win team. The Commanders were the shocking thing to me. And I like Jaden Daniels. I like him coming out of LSU. But I'm like, the Commanders aren't going to be. I mean, they were a team that went to the, they went into Detroit and beat Detroit. I mean, this was, to me, that was more of a shock than what the Denver Broncos did last year, although both certainly exceeded expectation. So I was thinking about who could that be this year. Certainly can't be the Broncos or the Commanders. They are on everyone's radar. People are bullish on both of those teams. But who would they be this year? In the AFC, I'll use kind of the same thought process that I just laid out. I didn't think that the Broncos were going to be bad last year. I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team. If there is a team that kind of fits the same mold as I believe the Broncos were, but has a chance to be a little bit better, I think I would look to New England. I think the Patriots have gotten a lot of stuff figured out in a short amount of time, kind of like the Broncos. Hired a good coach. Say what you will about Josh McDaniels, but the guy can coordinate the heck out of an offense. I like Drake May coming out of North Carolina. So I think they have a quarterback worth seeing what they got and has a chance to be pretty good. They're also in a division that feels pretty wide open after Buffalo. So if there's a team that I'm kind of looking at 8-9 wins, but could end up with 10 in a wild card spot, I think it would be the New England Patriots. I don't know how shocking that would be to many people. But again, I'll use the Broncos as a frame of reference. They only exceeded my expectation by a couple of games at the most. And kudos to them for that. I was wrong on the Denver Broncos, but I was in the ballpark, and then they were just slightly better. That's kind of the way I feel about New England. They're going to be better. They're going to be a team around the 500 mark. So could I see them maybe picking off an extra game or two that would make the difference, perhaps between them just missing out on the playoffs and making the playoffs? I think they would be that team. But keeping the same spirit, for the fact that the Commanders completely blindsided me, I did not think that the Commanders, I think they were headed in the right direction. I did not expect them to be what they were. So I want to go more shocking in the NFC. And I thought about the Giants, but I think the Eagles are still really good. I think even if the Commanders take a step back, they're not taking a huge step back. And I know everybody's, and I'm certainly down on the Cowboys more than I was before they traded Micah Parsons. But Dak Prescott and that offense, they're going to win them a decent amount of games. I don't know that they're in, and all of this with the Giants would be predicated upon Brian Daboll going to Jackson Dart sooner than I think he will. Because I'm not backing a Russell Wilson-led football team. Not making that mistake again. So if I was thinking about this, if the Giants were to go to Jackson Dart, let's say midway through the season, not because the season has gone off the rails, but just because Brian Daboll figured it was time, this was the right time to bring Jackson Dart in. Maybe it could be the Giants with the Commanders cannot possibly be as good as they were last year or get as far as they did. So maybe they're a little bit vulnerable. Dallas is worse than they were a week ago. But I'm like, yeah, how about this one? And I understand it's off the board. This is not a set in stone prediction, as Sean Payne would say. It's not written in concrete. But if there is a team that I look at and I say, maybe they might surprise. How about the Carolina Panthers? Now listen, hear me out. Hear me out. Somebody's got to finish, because I'm not necessarily talking about that worst to first thing. I'm just talking about a team that not many people are talking about, or that people are saying no way, that maybe were surprised at the end of the season that was kind of there. Saints are horrible, right? We can agree on this. Atlanta, how many times have we bought in to the Atlanta Falcons? Okay. The division, you can maneuver within that division, right? Say that. Tampa Bay, I like a lot. But are they invincible? No. Are they the Eagles? Are they Kansas City? Are they Buffalo? Are they Baltimore? No. I like them, and I think they'll win that division. I'm not saying that Carolina can threaten for the division, but I'm just saying, I'm doing the math in my head. Could Carolina knock off Tampa? Probably unlikely, but Tampa isn't necessarily the juggernaut that you certainly get in the AFC. I thought that Bryce Young was done when they benched him for Andy Dalton. I thought it was done. I'm like, I don't know how they're going to go back. But to their credit, they went back. They went back earlier than I thought they would. I thought maybe, Bryce Young, maybe this year we'd see him again just because, why not give it another shot? But he came back in earlier last year than I expected. And there were signs of life. And that's a credit to Carolina, Dave Canales, for what they did. They go out and they get Ted McMillan, who I love. And I watched him at times this preseason. That dude is, if he got competent quarterbacking play, that guy's going to be a problem. Weak division. You got what I think could be an elite offensive weapon. Maybe you have something, not Bryce Young being an elite quarterback, but maybe you have something there, certainly more than what you thought you had in him before they benched him for Andy Dalton. I could talk myself into Carolina being a team that we look back at the end of the season and be like, yeah, I had them way worse than this. Because there are some other teams like Cincinnati wouldn't qualify, right? I don't think San Francisco qualifies. We know why San Francisco was down last year. They were hurt. So I'm trying to think of teams that didn't perform well last year because they're just bad. And that nobody is really jumping on. Again, in the AFC with New England, I think that there are other people who would share in my belief in New England. I haven't heard as much chatter on Carolina. But if I had to choose somebody that most people believe is not going to do anything this year, maybe it's Carolina. 719-24-7, 1313. Come back, take any thoughts you have. Our coverage of NFL kickoff, Eagles and Cowboys begins at the top of the hour here on Extra Sports 1300. Congratulations to Jesse, who won the 4-pack of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Monterey Bay this Saturday night. Make sure you get your vote in for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week. Hopefully, if all works out. You know, kids these days, they lead busy lives. Hopefully able to get the leading vote getter on the show tomorrow. And we'll be getting ready for yet another NFL game tomorrow. I will say, more interesting than tonight. I think you could understand why that would be, and also know that around here, I think that that's probably a fair assessment, despite why I may put the number one reason why I'm more interested in tomorrow night's game than tonight's game. But also there's, two AFC West teams, two teams that are going to be battling with the Broncos this year. How does the Chargers offensive line look without Rashawn Slater? I know in his spot, they'll be fine because that'll be Joe Alt. What about the other side? So I think tomorrow's game, and plus you got the international aspect to it. And when I say that, I'm talking about what are the field conditions going to be like? We thought the last time an NFL game was played in Brazil, we thought Jordan Love was going to be out for the season. So field conditions down in Sao Paulo, how is that going to impact the game? We'll get into all of that tomorrow. As for tonight's game, this line moved in a significant way after Micah Parsons got traded. Not by leaps and bounds, but if you are a sports bettor, you know that the move from 7.5 to 8 is massive. It is consequential. And that's where it is moved. It's still 8.5 at some shops. I think what has to be kept in mind with the Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons didn't play offense. They have Dak Prescott back. They have CeeDee Lamb. Not saying that the Dallas Cowboys are going to accomplish anything this year, that Jerry Jones is going to be thumbing his nose at everybody saying, I told you so, and I was right, we're better without him, yada, yada, yada. I don't envision any of that happening. But one thing I will say for the Dallas Cowboys this season, I think they will keep games close. I know Dak Prescott, playoffs, that's a whole different story. Regular season Dak Prescott is a prolific thrower of the football, and the Dallas Cowboys put up points. I would lean Dallas plus the points. At it now being 8 or 8.5. I would lean Dallas plus the points. And also we know these banner raisings, weird things can happen. It's supposed to be this party and celebration for the Eagles. How does that impact them? Are they like 100% locked in? So I think I'm where I am going is I think Dallas covers. But certainly I don't think tonight will be the start of something special for the Dallas Cowboys. It could be for Philadelphia. And what I'm looking for Philadelphia right off the bat is this regular season going to be better for Jalen Hurts? In many ways, you have the complete antithesis of one another at the quarterback position. Dak Prescott slings the ball around the yard, puts up huge numbers during the regular season. Big games come along during the regular season too, but especially in the playoffs. Doesn't work out for him, right? Jalen Hurts is the polar opposite. There were times last year where Jalen Hurts' ability to throw a forward pass was in question. Like, that's just a fact. People were really down on Jalen Hurts during the regular season last year. And the Eagles were, to the point where they went, okay, we're going all in on Saquon now. So Jalen Hurts, and we've had a lot of Jalen Hurts discussion this offseason about what he is or what he isn't. I know for a fact he is a big game player. This is kind of a big game. Not big in terms of its significance for the entire season, because I don't think Dallas is any threat to unseating Philadelphia in the NFC East, but this is a big stage, and that tends to bring out the best in Jalen Hurts. And as I say that, it tends to bring out the worst in Dak Prescott. I still think 8.5. Yeah, I think I'll still lean Cowboys. But this season, tonight and beyond for Jalen Hurts, we know that when the lights are the brightest, when the Eagles get to the playoffs, which I fully expect them to do, the best of Jalen Hurts is going to come out, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And it's going to take a great team to ultimately unseat them and keep them from going back to the Super Bowl. But during the regular season, is Jalen Hurts going to ascend to now he's just really good all the time? Is he one of the best 10 quarterbacks in the league because of what he does during the regular season and the playoffs, or are we still just sticking with the playoff stuff? Because if you could be one or the other, you'd certainly rather be Jalen Hurts than Dak Prescott. But does Jalen Hurts produce all season long for Philly, or is it heavy on Saquon, Jalen Hurts, would you take him as your franchise QB, yada, 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 all that kind of stuff, and then the playoffs roll around and then Jalen Hurts becomes almost a completely different person? So, first impression is what we're getting tonight with the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's one thing. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to worry about anybody getting in his space very quickly tonight, because that guy is in Green Bay now. It'll be a good one. Just excited that the NFL is here. They could put Titans Jags on the TV, and I'd be locked in. But be locked into this one. Dallas, Philly, our coverage from Westwood One, as you will hear from Kevin Harlan, coming up next. Talk to you tomorrow.